This is part two of a video series on how to make a music video using free software called Blender. You can get Blender at blender.org, and be sure you download for your operating system and for whether or not it's 64-bit or 32-bit. In the first section, I demonstrated one way to create a title. There are infinite number of possibilities for titling. Just take a look at the titling and any movie and you'll see what I'm talking about. Blender can do any of those. Anything you can see on those can be duplicated using Blender. And there may be an exception out there somewhere, but I seriously doubt it. Okay, so I've started up Blender. I've got the default scene. We do not need the cube. We'll just get it out of here. It doesn't matter if it's here or not because we're going to be working in the video sequence editor. So cameras and all that are irrelevant because you're using the sequencer now. It's going to render whatever's in the sequencer. So we can take them out or leave them. Doesn't matter. All right, we'll go down to the video editing using this drop-down menu here. Let me turn on screencast keys first, so you can see what mouse clicks I'm using. All right, we'll select from the list and we'll go down to video editing. This is your track window. This is where your tracks go. You have unlimited tracks. And by way of explanation, if you use your middle wheel and scroll, you can zoom in and out. If you use the control button, you can go left and right by scrolling with the wheel. If you use the shift button, you can go up and down. So you can navigate quickly. If you want to get to a section, you zoom out, move your mouse, or scroll left and right, whatever you want to do. And then you can zoom right back in to that area. You can also push down and go anywhere you want just by moving the mouse. So push down on the middle mouse button. So that's how to navigate. When you get 8,000-10,000 frames, it gets kind of cumbersome unless you know how to use that situation. You can also grab. If you zoom way in, you'll see that we now have a bar here, and you can grab that bar and you can scroll back and forth as well. So several ways to navigate. First thing you want to do when you get into the sequence editor is go down to the very bottom. This is your timeline window here. This is your graph editor here. You probably won't be using this unless you want to get real sophisticated. And this is your display window. I usually will join these two because I don't use the top one. So I right-clicked on that and select Join Area. The arrow says what's going to be joined what. And if you make a mistake, you can always go down here and select whatever it is that you want to use this top window for. And this can be a little smaller if it needs to be. So we want to make sure we're on frame 1. You can see down here, you can increment through the timeline, you can scrub through the timeline, or you can click and type in. Same with the end frame. You can change the number of frames. You can change where it's going to start and where it's going to end. You can also type in to say you want 3,000 frames. And then again, you can scroll out. You can see the beginning and the end. So that's kind of how you navigate around. But you want to go back down to this playback down here in the very bottom. And you want to enable the audio-visual sync. And you want to enable frame dropping. And if you're getting real, particular or in detail on your timing, you might want to enable audio scrubbing. That's up to you. Okay, so we created a title in the first video tutorial, so we're going to add that title. Now, you can always use Shift-A to add. It's the hotkey command for adding something, and what you can add depends on which window you're using. In this situation, it's the track editor, so if I hit Shift-A or this one here, either one, you've got these options. They're the same whether you use the hotkey or not. And we created a series of images. So we're going to go add image, and we're going to navigate to where that was. Now, if you're not sure what these images are, because they're all just numbered, you can go right up here and select the tiling, and now you can see that it is the tiling that we created in the last one. So if I hit the A key, it'll select all and add the image strip. So now what we have is, you can see here as we scrub through the timeline, we have the title playing. Okay. Now first off, I can tell you I made a mistake and it's too dark. So I've got two options. I can go back and render again, lightening up the colors, or I can go over here to this properties window. If you don't have it display, hit your N key. It turns it on and off, just like it did in any of the windows. If there's a properties or a tools panel, the T or the N will activate the tools or properties respectively. So if you go down here and scroll down, you can see this multiply. So if we multiply in the color section, the higher the number, the brighter it gets. So we can lighten that up to whatever we want. And if it gets kind of cartoony looking, you can decrease the saturation a little bit and get rid of some of that. Or if it's not acceptable at all, you can go back and re-render. I feel like this is probably adequate. Okay, so I'm going to get back in a little closer here to the area where I'm at using those commands. And I want to move this up a little bit. So I want to show you here, if you select with your right mouse, A will deselect everything, or if you hit A, it selects everything. If only something is selected, one thing maybe out of 5. When you hit A, it'll deselect everything, and hit it again, it'll select everything. So you want just that one selected. Now if you hit your G key, you can now move it. And if you notice, there's a 1 at the beginning of the strip and a 250. That's the beginning and end frames. If I move it, you can see how it's counting up on both ends and down. So I'm going to move it up a couple because I want to put some things under it at some point. So I'm going to have it start again on frame 1. Actually, let's have it come in about frame 20, just for giggles. Okay, now we'll go back to frame 1, and we've got this title. And I want to overlay it, so I'm going to shift A to add. And I'm going to add a movie, and in my case, I've downloaded some free movies. Again, if you hit this little display button right here, it'll display it as pictures. And I think I'd like to use this river. This is a royalty-free. I downloaded from Pixabay. And if you're looking for subject matter for your videos, that's a good place to go. I'm sure there are others, but Pixabay does a pretty good job of providing things. So we want to add the movie strip. We select it by clicking on it, add movie strip. And now we've got the movie strip. If you hit Alt-A, or you can hit the play buttons down here. Alt-A. Now we see that we can't see the background. So what we have to do is we click this one, and then the alpha over, you want to click the one that's going to be on top, click it second. So right click on this one, hold down your shift key, and click on this one. Now they're both selected. You hit Shift A, Effect Strip, Alpha Over. Now you've got the video showing underneath. So if we go back here, and it'll be a little jerky, but you can see that the titling is coming in and doing its thing just like it should. Okay, so what we're missing here then is some sound. So let's go back to frame 1. And I'll add a song that I wrote myself. I've already put it out on the web there, so it's no big deal. I own the copyrights to it. So I'll go to sound, and mine happens to be in a directory on my desktop. and I'll use Mesa Child. I think it's good as any. And I'm just going to move Mesa Child up to the top out of the way so I can work with my video strips. Now when I hit Alt A, you'll hear sound, and okay, so there we've got some sound, we've got the title overlaid, and without taking up the time to show you, if you've got a video like this and it has some effects applied to it, overlays, things like that, and you try to mix that with another one, you're going to find out that it gives you all kinds of wonky results. And the reason is being the way Blender processes the tracks and all of that. So the way to fix that situation is if you right click, or you can use the B key and box select. Select the ones that you want to use, and then hit Control and G simultaneously, and it will group those into a meta clip. And if you have a relevant clip that is not selected, it'll tell you to select all the clips that are relevant. So once you've got this meta strip, now it behaves as though it's one strip. It still plays and does its thing just fine. But it's one strip, so you can now do overlays, and you can apply another effect to the meta strip. So pretty handy to know that. And then we can look here and we can see we end about here, and we don't really need a whole lot of this river unless you just want it as part of the scene. So I'm going to go down here a ways, and I think right about here. I'm just going to make sure I've selected it and hit the K on the keyboard, and what it'll do is cut that meta strip. Now I can get rid of that piece. Okay, so now we have, I'm going to turn off audio scrubbing. That's kind of bothersome for what I'm doing here. Now we can get to the very last frame. And once it goes black, then you know there's nothing else. That's the first frame where there's nothing. Now we can add another clip. So Shift A, movie. And this can be an image, it can be a movie clip, it can be whatever you want to include. And again, I like to use the little icons there so I can see what I'm doing. Here's a waterfall. So let's select that and add the movie strip. And now we can see we have a clean transition here. So Alt A, it's a cut, a direct cut. So it just goes from one right to the other. And there's a kind of a thing with transitions. I've read many places and many times that if you overdo transitions, it's a giveaway that you're an amateur. So what I like to do is I like to just go in before I start editing, just remind myself. I watch a couple of shows and I look and see how much they actually use transitions, and you'll find out in most cases it's not very often. They usually will use clean cuts. Sometimes they'll fade to white, or they'll fade to black and then bring in the next scene. But there's not a lot of overlays and fancy swipes and wipes and all that. Blender will do all of that. And I can't spend 4 hours going into every detail of how everything works, but just showing you some of the basics here. So the clean cut is if you put one after the other, and that works just fine. Now you can also hit the G key and go up here and move this to where they are overlapping. Now if you hit this key, or right click on this clip and then shift right click on this clip, you've selected the two of them. Now Shift A and Effect Strip Gamma Cross. Now you can see that it transitions, and I'll just play a little bit. So that's just one of many cross effects. Now, just for demo purposes here, I'm going to click that one first and this one and do the same thing. Gamma cross. Now watch what happens. So it's kind of wonky there. So you come in, and it first thing it does is jumps, and then it starts fading. And it's fading from the waterfall to the underlying clip, and then it comes back to the waterfall when it gets to the end. So the order that you select is critical depending on which effect you're using. So if something doesn't work right, try selecting in the other order. So let's go ahead and get rid of this and do it in the right order. So this clip is the underlying, this is the one that's fading in, and then we'll shift A, gamma cross. Okay, so now when we play it, I'll just scrub through the timeline. It should work fine. You can see that it does work fine. Okay, so we've done a gamma cross. So let's get down here a little ways, and I don't know how long a person wants to see that, but we can just assume that much, and we'll make sure this is selected. We'll hit K on the keyboard, and that will split it, and we can get rid of this. K is a soft split, and what that means is if you right-click the end of this clip, only one arrow is selected. If you hit G, you can move that. See that? You can change the length of the clip. You can also change it by typing in a number right here or hitting the increments. So if you clipped it in the wrong place, if you use the K, you can extend it back out or shorten it to find detail depending on what you're trying to do. If you hit Shift K, it will hard cut and you will not be able to extend and all that. So I use the K so that I can correct any mistakes I might have made easily without having to backtrack. So I've demonstrated one transition. You can do no transitions, or you can just do as many as you want. So rather than try and just duplicate this and demonstrate each kind of transition, you can go to the Blender org and look for the manual, go to the video editing section, the video sequence editor, and it'll have a walkthrough of how to use every one of the effects, how to implement them and make them work. And again, if you get trying to put an effect on and it doesn't work, if the clip that you are working with has other effects applied to it, you may need to create a meta strip. And again, Control G, select the ones that need to be in the meta strip. Control G will group them. If you want to edit that, if you right click on this and hit your tab key, it opens it back up. Now you can make any edits that you want, adjust anything that needs to be adjusted, then you hit the tab key and go back into the meta strip mode. So enough said on that. So just as you created the title here at the beginning, you can create an ending title or credits or anything like that that you want to put on there. So rather than go through an elaborate system, I'm going to use the add text feature. So first thing we want to do is give it a background color, and you can be any color you want, but get your cursor about where you want to start any transition or fade that you might want to do, and hit Control or Shift A, excuse me, and then go color. Now it's added the color strip, and like the other strips, if you click the end, you can extend it out. You can adjust the beginning and end frames right here. This in the same manner, or you can click on each end, however you want to do that. So we're going to transition from this one to this one. So I'm going to use that one first as the background, this one second, and use a gamma cross again, and you can see now it will fade to black. Okay, now this is where we're going to have our ending credits. So we'll do Shift A and add. You have to be down in the track window. Shift A, to add, and we want to add effect strip text. Okay, this is where the text is right here. Now we can set the length of that by right-clicking one end and hit G, and then drag it out to whatever we want, and then left-click to set it. Or you can type in the length here again just by typing it in, say 160. Okay, so now you can see the text here. So if we look down here, we just scroll down, we can see we can have it say whatever we want. So we'll just say created by William Hopper. And then hit enter to set it. Now you can see there it is. Now we got the size. Put it as big or as small as you want by adjusting right there. You can also align it to the center, the left, or the right. It just depends on what you're trying to do. So I'm put it in the center, and you can use the top, which puts it off the screen, the bottom, which puts it there, or you can center it. So I'm going to use the bottom. We're going to do something different anyway. So we've got this text now. I'm going to make it scroll to the top. So I want to give it a little more time. So I'm going to extend this out. And I'm going to extend this out. And then I'm going to make sure that this is selected. Hit Shift A for add, effect strip, transform. Now I've got X and Y positions. I can also scale. And I'm not going to get into the scale part, but essentially you can scale it left and right. You can scale it X and Y. Okay. And I'm just going to reset to default values. So 1 and 1 probably would be good. There we go. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to start at this frame. We're going to use the Y position and take it to a negative value and bring it down till it's out of screen. And then you're going to right-click or hover over, either one. If you hover over and hit I, it'll give you a keyframe. If you want to remove a keyframe, Alt-I will take it off. Keyframe is simply, at this frame, this object will be in this position. And if you make two keyframes, it will interpolate between the two, and it'll cause the text to move to the top. So we're going to right-click or hit the I key, insert keyframe, and then we're going to move to the end of the strip. See where it goes completely black. That's off the strip. Now we're on the strip. So we're at the very last frame. Now we're going to move the Y in a positive direction. I'm just clicking on the arrow and scrolling. And we just want to get it just off screen. Just keep working with it till you get it right off screen. And then right click and insert keyframe. So now, watching the end of the video, Alt A to play it, and so that's working pretty good. Except if you notice, we don't have this black color underneath. And this color could also be an image, or it could be whatever you want it to be at the end. I just chose a color because it's just quick and easy. But we need to be able to see it. So if you right click the color first, and then the overlay, the alpha over, is second. Then if you hit Shift A and do alpha over, now you can see. Now this is an example right here, and I did this on purpose. We've lost the transform. Okay, no transform because we've got more than one effect going. So let's Control Z to undo that. what we want to do is we want to create a meta strip out of these. So hit that one, and then hit Control G. Now we can take this strip and this strip, Shift A, alpha over, and you can see that we still have the animation. So that's an example of what happens if you try to put too much together too fast. So you want to, if you run into that problem, create a meta strip and then apply your next effect, and that's how you do that. So if we play this from end to end, here we go. We'll rewind and play it. It'll be a little jerky because it has to jump frames to keep up with the audio. Okay, so the title's done. Now it transitions to scene 2. And then it'll transition to the ending, which would be the credits scrolling. All right. Now we can determine that there's nothing else to be seen there. So we are at frame 1119. You can see it down here. Okay, so let's just make that the same, 1119. Now you can see here by zooming in a little bit, you can see that the I want to get in real close. I guess I'm zoomed in a little bit too close. There we go. Now you can see there's a definite line right there. That's where it stops playing. If I start playing that, when it gets to that point, it'll jump to the beginning and start over. Okay, so that's how you set the overall length of your situation, your video clip. If you had audio that you wanted to fade it out for some reason, maybe you go to an ending song of some sort and you want that to fade. If you select your sound strip, I guess first thing to do, let's clip the ending. So let's go to the very end. And that's where we are. We're at 119 now. I'm going to zoom back out a ways and scroll up. At 119, if you hit K on the audio strip, so K, and then select the tail end and get rid of it. Now, if for some reason you wanted this audio strip to fade out, you can go here, and if you look, you have a volume. So if you set a keyframe and then go to the end and then change the volume to 0 and hit a keyframe, now you have a fade out on the audio. All right. And that is pretty much the components of creating a music video using Blender. And again, this is absolutely free program. There's no strings attached. There's no ads. There's no nagging screens to come on and tell you need to purchase the pro version and all that. It is 100% free. A very robust program. I've only scratched the surface, and really haven't made a big scratch in that either. There's a lot here. You can use the 3D creation tools to create your own video content, or you can go out with your camera and take video, whatever you want to do. The sky is the limit. You can add text and titling, you can do overlays, you can do just about anything. You can make a fade to a white strip, fade into the next scene. You can colorize, you can make things glow, you can invert the colors, you name it, you imagine it, you can probably do it in Blender using the video sequence editor or a combination of the 3D tools and the editor. But I guess the last step is to actually render the video out. So if we go to the default screen here, And I use the default screen because it already has the panels and everything. You can change to any scene that you want by clicking right here. Any screen that you want is right here. So in this case, this is the properties. So I could change this main window, look for the same icon right here. Now see, I've got the same window, only it's large. And then I can go right back to the 3D window. So I can make my own custom screen arrangements. So the main idea here is we want to do some rendering. So let's go over here and look at this a little bit. So the first thing is render time. If you want a high quality video, like full screen, 1920 by 1080 HD, that kind of thing, you want to go down here to resolution. You can see it right here. This one is set to 50%, so it'll be half of this resolution. There are presets in here for standard resolutions, the different aspect ratios, television, etc. 1920 by 1080. I mean, just about everybody does things on their computer anymore, so I like to use that one. If you increase the size from 50 to 100 or somewhere in between, the more resolution, the longer the render time. So it just depends on how fast your computer is, how long you want to wait. I do most of my rendering overnight. If I've got several thousand frames to render, I do it overnight. If you load a movie clip, there's nothing to render but a pre-rendered frame, so it'll render really quickly. But anytime you add a transition or an effect or maybe a 3D overlay from one of your scenes, it has to render that, so it starts taking a long time. If you're using strictly video clips and titling, anywhere there's an overlay, a title, it'll take a little while to render each frame, but once you get past that, the main movie portions will render very quickly. So you want to keep that in mind. For upload size and all that, I try to keep it around 50%. And then I like the frame rate at 25. So we're going to go to the output section. This is where you determine where it's going to go and what it's going to be. If you've got a lot of frame rendering of 3D scenes and all that, you want to render to PNG files and then load them back in and then render them out. But in this case, I've used a video sequence editor. I just want to render it out to a movie file. So let's pick the location. We go to the output section here. Click on this little folder, and I'll just put it on my desktop. And then we want to select the type of output. In this case, you've got all of these image types. Here's the movie options. H.264 is a very good compression algorithm to give you a nice clean video at lowest possible size as far as the file size for uploads. So we're using H.264. Now we go to the encoding tab, and we can put it in a wrapper and make this MPEG-4 because that's kind of what YouTube uses. Audio codec. You have audio in your file, so you want to make sure if you have none, there will be no audio. You'll have lost it. So be sure you go to audio codec. The recommended for YouTube is AAC, as I understand it, so we'll use the AAC format, and we'll just leave the defaults. All right, so once you've got that, you've selected where it's going to go. Your dimensions, start and end frames are all right here. They're down here as well, but they also are redisplayed up here. So we've got frame rate 25%, just going through the checklist. We've got all the frames selected. We've got the resolution set. We're using H.264 as the codec, and we're using MPEG-4 as the output wrapper, and we're using AAC as the audio. Once you've done that, then you hit animation, and you'll see that it begins rendering out the frames. And you see it's moving pretty fast. There's a frame count right up here. So because it's not having to render anything out, Other than images, it just moves along pretty quickly. So I'm going to pause the recording. And let's just see here. Maybe when it gets to the end of this, it'll start going faster. If I've got time, I usually sit over a cup of coffee and watch it render out. If it's going to take too long, then I just render it overnight. By watching it render, you can tell if there's something you missed, something went wonky, you can tell it. This gives you a frame-by-frame play. Somewhere around 250, it should actually speed up and go pretty doggone quick. And any slowdowns would be at transitions, but they should be about as quick as this one's rendering here. See, I'm already almost a fourth of the way through the rendering process, so I may just let this play out. Okay, we're just about to the end here. We'll see if it picks up. If it picks up, I'll leave it. If not, I'll stop it and then restart the recording. It's gained a little speed. We're at 300 frames, so we're almost a third of the way through. I think I'll stop the recording. All right, we've finished rendering and we're back in Blender now. The last frame was black, so there it is. So I guess at this point we can minimize this and we'll look on the desktop and find it. And then we'll play this thing back and see what we get. This reminds me of a river in Washington State where I used to live. Okay. And that was VLC Media Player that I used just for giving credits there. It's also a free program. So that kind of concludes how to create the music video using one of your own audio tracks and any content that you can come up with. If you just want still shots, that transform command that I used, you can use that to zoom in and zoom out and pan. So that's in commercial video editing, that would be called pan and zoom. You can duplicate that using the transforms. So you can pan and zoom, you can fade, you can overlay. It just, if you can imagine it, you can probably do it with Blender. So I would encourage you, if you're operating on a shoestring budget or if you just want to save a few bucks, you know, Blender is absolutely free. I'd be happy to answer any questions a person might have. I'm not an expert, but I've used Blender for a number of years. And if I don't know the answer, I know how to find the answer. There's a ton of tutorials out there on the web that go into detail about modeling and all that. If I have a request for a tutorial, I'll be happy to try and comply and do what I can, or I can find one that's already been done and tell you where to find it. So with that, I look forward to seeing some of the videos that some of the others have created. Thanks for watching.